Hi there, my name is Glenn Barfield, Assistant Scoutmaster at Troop 571 in Sammamish, Washington. And today I'm putting together this little video of the basics of camping, either in a tent or in a hammock. Now, I want something to be clear here. This is for the basics of tent and hammock camping, but I want those who have got lots of experience with lots of tips and tricks, lessons learned, to watch this video as well. And in the comment section below, put your ideas, your suggestions, your tips, your tricks, because it's your knowledge that will help Scouts of America improve, enjoy, and get a better experience of what we love doing, camping. So if you've got tips and tricks, comment section, put them down there. Thank you, I appreciate it. Now, I want to make sure that this is also understood. This is backpacking camping as opposed to car camping, where you can bring along a lot more stuff. For backpacking camping, I've got my Gregory Evolution backpack loaded up with a bunch of stuff. Now, when I go camping with the Scouts, I always bring extra stuff, so you'll see my pack pretty well loaded up with things. And this depends upon the situation in which we're going. So for instance, if we're going camping in the winter time, I'll bring along extra gloves, an extra hat, extra socks. And I recommend doing this if you're going out camping, to bring along one or two extra things, because there's always somebody in the troop or in your group that might forget something or get something wet or lose something, things like that. So it pays to be a little bit prepared and bring along one or two extra things. Now for this first section, we're going to look at tents. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring the camera in close, I'm going to walk around the tent and point out some of the basics of tent and how it's set up, and some of the tips and tricks that I've got that I've incorporated into tent camping. So tents these days come in three parts: the tent itself with its poles, and then the rain fly that goes over the tent to keep everything dry. The poles fit into the little grommets that are there for them on the corners of the tent. And you'll notice here you've got this ring which the rain fly attaches to right there. This is the stake holding it in, and this is one of my tips and tricks. I've attached some blue reflective paracord to my tent spike there. I do this because these are easily lost. In fact, every single campsite I've ever been to, I've lost a tent stake until I started doing this. And I've always found two or three to replace the ones that I've lost. So I know other people are losing them too. So you put something like this around your tent spike, and that way it's easier to pull out, and it's a lot easier to keep track of and not lose. One thing I recommend bringing with you when you go camping is some duct tape for repairs. Duct tape is a wonderful thing. Right there you see a patch of duct tape that I have put on the sleeve that the pole goes through, because it ripped and I don't want to rip anymore. A little bit of duct tape, problem solved. When you're setting up your tent, make sure you attach all the parts that are supposed to be attached. Don't leave anything unattached. For instance, if this is not attached to the pole supporting the tent, this fabric here, if there's any breeze, is going to be flapping around, irritating you and making a lot of noise, and the tent won't work the way it's supposed to. So you've got your tent set up, and now it's time to get in and set up your sleeping situation for the evening. And so you get into the tent, and then you just kind of, no, you don't. You don't just swing your feet into the tent. The reason being is that you want to keep your tent and the inside of your tent as dry and as clean as possible, especially dry. Get things wet inside your tent, and you're going to have your gear, your sleeping bag, whatever, get wet. And you don't want that. So what you do is you bring along with you a small collection of plastic bags. And when you get into the tent, before you swing your feet in there, you take your boots off and you put them into a plastic bag. And then when you swing your feet in there, everything stays dry. So you may be asking, well, why don't I just leave my boots outside of the tent? Well, you could do that, but if you have rain, drizzle, or even a heavy dew, your boots are going to get wet. Also, that nice warm dry boot there, that's a nice cave for a critter. And you don't want to put your foot into your boot when there's a critter in there. It's not good for you, and it's definitely not good for that critter. So put them into a bag. Stuff them into the corner of your tent and you're fine. So let's talk about your sleep setup. Now, what you want to make sure that you've got is a layer of something between the whole cold ground and you. If you're laying right on the ground is going to pull the body heat away from you, okay? It will suck the heat right out of you and you're going to be cold and miserable. That sleeping bag that you've got there, it may be rated up to 15 degrees below zero, but it won't matter because when you lay on it, you're squishing it flat and you're pretty much touching flat on the ground and you're going to have body heat pulled away from you. So you have a sleeping pad underneath you. That can be something as ultralight as, like, say, a 3/4 closed cell foam pad like this. Really good for the summertime, and all you really need, it covers you from basically just below the butt up to the shoulders, and this will do just fine for the summertime. You may also want to have something a little bit bigger. This is a full body pad with reflective material on the inside that will reflect some of the body heat back onto you. Always a good thing, especially in the spring, summer, and fall. You can also get those pads that self-inflate. These are nice, these are pretty good to use. The one thing that some people complain about though is that you set them up and then the air inside gets cold and then it takes a while for that air to warm back up so that you are feeling warm in your sleeping bag. So basically you put the pad down, you go away, do something else, the air gets cold, you put your sleeping bag on there, put your body on there, and then you're feeling that cold air. Eventually your body heat warms up that air and you're okay. But in the meantime, you're feeling a little bit cold. What you can also do, if you're a cold sleeper, or it's the wintertime, especially in the wintertime, you can get a roll of Reflectix. You can get this at hardware stores, like a 10-foot roll for 20 bucks. This stuff will reflect about 98% of your body heat back onto you. So especially if you're camping in the wintertime, or you're a cold sleeper, like I said, you put down your sleeping pad, you put this on top, then your sleeping bag, or you can reverse it. People do it a couple of different ways. Find out which way works best for you, but this will reflect the body heat back onto you and keep you toasty warm. Really great, especially in the wintertime. So for sleeping bags, there's two kinds of sleeping bags that you can get. There is the down sleeping bag, which I like, but there are disadvantages to it. There's also the synthetic sleeping bags. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to both of them. The one thing is that down sleeping bags are generally much, much lighter than synthetic sleeping bags. Now, there are some new synthetic sleeping bags that you can get which are comparable in weight to down sleeping bags. They are quite pricey. You will go and spend $300 or so on a sleeping bag that's of a good quality. But what I have found is that a reasonably priced synthetic or down sleeping bag will keep me warm, and if I'm going to be going into colder conditions, a wool blanket from an Army-Navy surplus store on First Avenue, for example, will get me through the night quite comfortably. And if I've got Reflectix underneath me, I know I'm going to not get that cold being pulled, that cold affecting me and pulling my heat away. So for this example, I'm going to set up my down sleeping bag. Now the disadvantages with down is that if it gets wet, all that down compresses and you lose all your heat retention very quickly. So that's a downside. The other downside is that keeping them clean is kind of a bear. To clean a down sleeping bag, you've either got to take it to a professional, which will not be cheap, or you can buy the down cleaning solution and clean your down sleeping bag in the bathtub. And that takes a while to do because you've got to clean it, rinse, dry it out, rinse, dry it out, rinse. And it'll take you a couple of hours to get it cleaned. And then drying it, you can't put it in the dryer. You got to let it air fluff and air dry out. So it's going to take a while. The synthetic sleeping bags, most of those you can just toss those into the washing machine and then either air dry them or toss them into the dryer and put them on like low or medium temperature and dry them that way, and they'll come out just fine. So there are advantages to that. The one thing that you want to make sure that you do with your sleeping bag when you go camping, so you've got your sleeping bag inside of its bag, and what you've also done is you have put your sleeping bag inside of a garbage sack. Now you've done that because if it rains even a little bit and your sleeping bag gets wet, you're basically going to be sleeping in a damp sleeping bag that night. And nobody wants that. That's miserable. So what you do, you get a garbage bag like this, put it inside the bag that the sleeping bag goes in, and then stuff everything in. Okay? That way you'll keep your sleeping bag nice and dry, which is what you want. So the first thing you probably notice there is that there's a huge garbage bag in the middle of the tent. That's my backpack. My roommate is also going to have a backpack, and we're both probably going to keep our backpacks in that tent so that if it gets rainy in the night or there's a heavy dew or drizzle, our backpacks stay dry. Also, we have access to all our gear. We may need ibuprofen because we're older scoutmasters and we've got body aches and we need an ibuprofen, or we want an extra pair of socks, or we want a midnight check up on our phones or our maps or whatever. We've got all of our things there ready for us to use if we need them. So that 3-person tent, well, it's really a 2-person tent and gear, isn't it? Keep that in mind. So that looks pretty cozy. I've got my down sleeping bag ready to go and ready for the night. Now, as I said earlier, if you've got tips and tricks about setting up your tent, please put them down there in the comments section. But right now, we're going to switch on over to doing hammocks. So now that we've covered tents, let's talk about hammocks. Now, before I get into showing you the hammock setup and tips and tricks for hammocks, I want to talk about what hammock camping is all about. It's an alternative to tents that has gained a lot of popularity recently, and if you go on Amazon and do a search for camping hammocks, you will find tons of hammocks, tons of them, and rainflies. This rainfly is folded back right now to show you the hammock. Normally it'd be folded over. But a word of warning about hammocks. Now with a tent, you just need to find some flat ground, put the tent up. The instructions are very clear. It's very easy to set up. There's no brainer to it really. It just needs some flat ground. Catch, of course, is that it's very, very hard to find flat ground, especially if you're camping out in the woods. Flat ground isn't always an option. With hammocks, you don't have to worry about that. You just need a couple of trees that are the right length apart and you're good to go. However, hammock camping does require a little bit of ingenuity, a little bit of fiddling around, some engineering thinking. So hammocks aren't necessarily for everyone. And I want to make this clear, especially for the parents of scouts who are thinking, okay, I'm going to go buy some gear for my scout. Oh yeah, hammock camping, that's the new thing. It's all exciting and my son wants to do it. My daughter wants to do this. They want a hammock. Let's go get a hammock. First, think about setting it up and what's involved in setting it up. Okay, so when I'm going to bring this camera in close, I'm going to show you some of the setup and how that's done. And I want you to be thinking to yourself, okay, I want to do hammock, but am I ready for the engineering part that comes with hammock setup? Okay, so this red hammock here is my gear hammock. That goes below the hammock I sleep in and is attached to the end of the hammocks. And then above it, I've got the rainfly. Now, my hammock is set up sort of a bridge style with my hiking poles separating the sides so that I'm not squished on the shoulders. My hammock is a do-it-yourself. I made this hammock myself, the suspension and everything. You can do that, but again, it needs some sewing and you need to know what you're doing. And it took me about 3 or 4 hammocks before I got this right. But this one works just perfectly for me. There's plenty of hammocks though that are available through the market, which will work well for you as well. So look at them, think about them, ask some questions. This hammock suspension that I've got has this strap here, which goes to the tree, and it's then got just a slip knot around this sender ring here. And then I've got Dyneema cord that goes to the hammock here. And this ridge line here goes all the way across. Also holds my bag to put my stuff in. To the other end where I've got the same kind of setup here. And again, this is a slip knot, descender ring, and this is just the Dyneema attached to the descender ring. This here is the line for the gear hammock, and this is again just a slip knot. The gear hammock, called that because that's where all my gear is. I put my backpack and everything down there, and it's going to be underneath my hammock and my rainfly, so everything will stay dry. And in the night, if I need something, I can just reach underneath and pull it out. The hammock is set up with my Reflectix pad, and what I've done, I'll pull this back so you can see this better. I've duct taped 2 wings to the sides where my shoulders are, so that when I'm laying in it, my shoulders are wrapped in that Reflectix and I'm kept nice and warm. Now the problem with hammocks, instead of being the loss of heat due to conduction, it's a loss of heat due to convection. The wind, air going underneath the hammock will pull all your body heat away. In the tropics, that's probably nice, but we don't live in the tropics. So that's why we have something like this Reflectix material. You can also use an underquilt or other kinds of pads, but I like my Reflectix. In this case, I'm going to be using my synthetic sleeping bag, just so you guys can see what that looks like. And I'm going to sleep in that tonight. That's rated down to about 20 degrees, but I should be okay because we're only going down to about 30 degrees tonight. The rainfly is attached using this reflective paracord and a bowline to make a loop, and then a marlin spike to hold it tight, and then the strap for the hammock is this seat belt material rated to about 1,500 pounds, and a loop sewn in and then threaded through there. Very basic, very easy to set up. The rainfly is attached using a prusik knot and then again a marlin spike. Again, very do-it-yourself, but easy to do if you know what you're doing and you know prusik knots and other simple knots. To attach it to the tree on the other side, this goes around the tree, comes back, loops through this here, which is also attached with a prusik knot, tied off with a slip knot. Again, very basic. If you know your knots, this is easy to do. Okay, so let's talk about cooking. I'm not going to do any cooking here, but I want to talk about some of the tips and tricks that I've learned, I've seen others do, that I've adopted because they make sense and they're good ideas. So the first thing is, let's talk about the food, okay? There's lots of different kinds of dehydrated foods. This is Backpacker's Pantry. Mountain House is very popular, especially with my son. But one thing I want to point out about these meals, they come in servings of 2. Now, each serving is 38% of your daily sodium intake. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's a little bit less, depending upon the meal. But basically, if you eat this whole bag, that's about 70 to 80% of your daily sodium in one meal. Not necessarily a good thing to be doing, okay? Fortunately, what you can do, you can take a freezer Ziploc bag, divide this in 2, put half of it in here. Okay, now you've got 1 meal, 2 bags, 1 meal in each bag, okay? So what you can do then, the Ziploc bag, the freezer style, if you pour the boiling water in there, it won't dissolve, it won't fall apart, nothing bad will happen, and you can actually get 2 meals out of it. If you're still hungry, you can bring along snack bars, fruit, or maybe make yourself some oatmeal to have with it, something like that, to give you those extra calories or extra protein that you might need. Beef jerky, something like that. That'll work too. But I don't recommend eating a whole bag of these. Like I said, 70 to 80% of your sodium in one meal, not necessarily good. Speaking of Ziploc bags, make sure all your food is transported and stored in the freezer style Ziploc bags. You want to make sure that the critters can't smell the food, okay? This will also help keep all the bags inside of it nice and dry in case you get caught in the rain, which does happen. All right. The other thing is, when you're done cooking up all your food, these make great garbage bags. You can put all the junk into them, zip it up, put it into your bear bag or wherever. Harder for the critters to smell, less likely for them to be attracted to it. Now let's talk about cooking, okay? You can get your jet boils and other kinds of cooking camping stoves that are like jet boils, and although I've used those and I like them, I prefer something a little more simplistic. This is a steamer mug or steamer cup for making steamed milk for lattes. Heavy duty steel. I made a lid for it out of an old jar lid, which goes on the top. I put that on top of my little stove here that goes on top of my fuel. And I heat up my water in this. I've got a windshield that I made out of the some heavy duty aluminum that goes around the whole thing to keep the wind off it. My lighter, and then a cloth to kind of clean up and hold the handle if it gets hot. Because all I need to do is boil up water. I don't need to do much else than that. I just need to boil up the water, either to make my cocoa, my tea, or for the dehydrated meal. So this works just fine, and it all fits into this little bag. A lot less space, very, very lightweight. Okay. Now, some of the other things that you need to bring along with you when you go camping: toilet paper. A lot of campsites have toilets and they have toilet paper. Often they run out of toilet paper. And of course, if you're backpacking out in the woods, there is no toilet paper except for what you bring. So don't forget to bring toilet paper. Wipes. Keeping your hands and your face clean and your gear clean, always a good idea, all right? And also helps clean up, little messes, or maybe you get a cut or a scrape, you can clean it up with wipes. I recommend bringing along one of these little like baby wipe pouches like this. Insect repellent. We don't have much of a problem with insects necessarily on the western side of the Cascades, but we do get them. Bring along your bug spray, put it into a Ziploc bag like this, because these bottles invariably leak, and then you get, bug spray all over your stuff. That's not good. And of course, you want to bring along a little cup to be able to drink your stuff out of, or your tea or your hot cocoa. Oh, something I forgot. Reflectix. I love this stuff. Make yourself a cozy. Make yourself a cozy out of this reflective material. You get your hot boiling water, you pour it into here. Your hand doesn't then get burned because of the hot boiling water going through the bag. And the heat stays in. And the contents will heat up a lot sooner and rehydrate a lot better because the heat is staying in. And then when you're done, you can just keep it into the cozy and reach your food. Now the other catch though is the size of these bags. A normal spoon doesn't work so well. So what I recommend you do, go to Valley Village or Goodwill or something like that, go to the kitchen section and get one of these longer spoons like this. And that way you can get in and get down all into the corners. You can get the regular size spoon, but then you've got to kind of get your hand down in there, and then you get food all over your hand. It's just messy. One other thing I recommend doing is when you go and pick out your headlamp to wear, okay, make sure you get one that has the red light, and use the red light. Now, going to the bathroom or something like that, you'll probably want to use the brighter lights, but when you're walking around the camp, when you're getting in and out of your tent and things like that, use the red light. That bright, bright, shining white light will wake up your camp mates. Nobody wants that. It's annoying. Get the red light. You can still see what you're doing, and you won't wake up your camp mates and your tent mates so easily. The other thing to do, most people wear it around the head like this, which is all well and fine. It works great. But what I recommend doing if you're in a camping situation where you've got a lot of people around you and you're talking to a lot of people, put this around your neck, cinch it up a little bit. It'll still illuminate everything that you need, but the light won't be shining right into people's eyes, which is really annoying and can be blinding. So put it around the neck. It still illuminates everything really well, but it won't blind people right in the eye. I think that's all the tips and tricks I can think of. Now, as I said earlier, if you've got tips and tricks, make sure to put them in the comments section, okay? Hopefully you've been thinking of tips and tricks this whole time, advice, ideas, put them in the comment section. This will help other scouts, and it'll help me too if I can learn something new, which I'm always willing to do. Well, I'm all set up, so it's time probably to get some food in me and hit the sack. In the morning, we'll talk about what to do with your gear when you're done camping, because that's just as important as setting up your camp in the first place. See you guys in the morning. All right, so I've spent the night here, and I think it's about time I got this all put away. Now, the important thing about putting things away, get it all packed into your backpack and hike back to the trailhead and you drive home. Don't just toss everything into the garage and forget about it. Get everything out. If it's damp, hang it up to dry. If it's dirty, clean it. You need to take care of your gear. Take care of your gear so your gear can take care of you. The last thing you want is to get that gear out sometime and realize it's all moldy and it's dirty and it smells and it's gross. You don't want that. You're probably gonna have to buy new gear if that's the case, and you don't want to have to spend money on more gear. You need to take care of your gear so your gear can take care of you when you need it. And one other thing, knowledge is the most important thing that we take out into the woods with us when we go camping. All this gear and everything, it's great and it's good to have, but the knowledge of how to use it and how to handle things when things don't go quite right, that's what really makes the camping experience good. The knowledge that we have about what to do, how to do things. So if you've got tips, tricks, things you've learned, put them in the comments section. This will help scouts enjoy the camping experience more. It'll help assistant scoutmasters enjoy the camping experience more too, because we want to learn as well. So like I said, if you've got tips and tricks, ideas, suggestions, put them in the comments section. That will help us all learn how to have a really great camping experience. So I hope you've enjoyed this little video, and thank you for watching. And my friends, I hope to see us all sometime out in the woods, camping and enjoying the beauty of nature. See you out there.